Awesome, David, thank you, I'm so glad. So if you haven't been here before, we are a nonprofit community biolab dedicated to promoting citizen science and access to biotechnology. We have a BSL-1 lab, a fully equipped lab, just located upstairs on the second floor. And if afterward you'd like to come and take a tour, you're more than welcome. So we offer memberships, which are just $100 per month, which offer anyone, you don't have to have a degree or any training, access to our lab and basic pipette tips and different reagents and different things like that. We also offer intro to biotech courses, workshops, and other events like this science talk that we're doing on tonight. So as I said, this talk is another installation of the No Science series, which is an international education and advocacy organization working to promote knowledge of science and scientific research to a non-specialized audience. So we're very happy to welcome them back again tonight. So I would like to introduce our speaker for the evening, Dr. David Putrino. David is a physical therapist with a PhD in neuroscience and treasurer of No Science. He has worked clinically in both private practice and hospital environments before moving from Australia to the United States to study, I just lost my place, to study computational neuroscience at Harvard Medical School and MIT. He then accepted a postdoctoral fellowship at New York University, designing prostheses for brain-machine interface devices. David is currently an associate professor of rehabilitation medicine at Weill Cornell Medical College and the director of telemedicine and virtual rehabilitation at Burke Medical Research Center. In this position, he works at the intersection of accessible healthcare solutions for individuals in need of better healthcare accessibility. He also consults for gradual high performance, using state-of-the-art technology to monitor and enhance athletic performance. Finally, he serves as the chief mad scientist at Not Impossible Labs, a group that crowdsources accessible technological solutions for a high-impact humanitarian problems. So welcome, David.
Well, thanks everyone for coming. This is amazing. I can't believe we've packed out the room. This is so much fun. I've got to give it my wine. So thanks for the introduction. That was really nice. As Alison was saying, I'm here speaking to you guys because of No Science, where we're all about communicating science to the people, and we just think that science is amazing, and that knowing a little bit about it can improve your life and your quality of life. So today I am going to talk to you about some of the lessons I've learned about integrating technology into human performance, into health, into everything really, and seeing how we can use technology to improve our lives. Alison's really covered this quite well, but I started out life as a physical therapist. I was primarily interested, I worked across a lot of fields, but I was primarily interested in how we could help people with neurological disorders to recover function. So I worked with people with stroke, traumatic brain injury, spinal cord injury, and through it all, the big question that we were trying to tackle was these people used to be able to move, now they can't move, how can we get them to move? So when I was working as a physical therapist, I got very fed up with working in a hospital system because a lot of what we were doing wasn't evidence-based. It was just do it because somebody told me to do it. And when you actually tried to read the literature, there was nothing there that actually said that this is the way you should do things. And so I did what everyone does when they have a crisis of faith. I just went back to college. I was like, I'll go to grad school. That will solve all of my problems. And so I did a PhD in basic neuroscience of movement, studying the brain directly, trying to understand how the brain controlled movement. And that worked out pretty well, but it just raised a lot more questions than it answered. And so then I moved on to Boston, and I started working with some really clever people who studied how to build computational models of neural networks. So trying to understand, okay, well, the brain is bigger than just one cell that controls one muscle. It's many, many millions, even billions, even trillions of cells working together in a network. that actually start to allow us to control movement. And so to begin to understand that, you need to understand big data. You need to understand how many simultaneously applied data sets are working together to produce a result. And so I worked in a great neurostatistics lab there and learned a few things, but also realized that I wasn't any closer to helping people. So I moved on and I moved to New York, mainly because I really liked New York as well. So that was good motivator to move out of Boston. That was when I started working with brain-computer interfaces. Brain-computer interfaces, in case you don't know, these are wonderful devices that can record brain signal, and then you use the brain signal to control some other external device. Now, that external device can be a toaster or it can be a prosthetic arm. The whole point is that you're using a signal to control something else. And so we chose a prosthetic arm, not a toaster, and we trained a whole bunch of monkeys to control the movements of a prosthetic arm. And that was great. It worked quite well, and it worked pretty robustly, but I started to get to a point there where I wanted to move on because, getting monkeys to control arms is all well and good, but when you actually look at the big picture, it was like a $100,000 implant going into a monkey, and you had to have 2 or 3, very qualified scientists following the monkey around, doing their computations to make sure that the arm worked correctly. Then there's the whole issue of not wanting to have monkeys have robotic arms because they're mean and they'll probably take over the world if you give them the chance. So lots of reasons. I wanted to get back to actually helping people. So I accepted the position I'm in now. And in that, like every single person that works in my lab right now, the question that we ask is, how can we use technology to make people's lives better? How can we use technology to educate people about their health? How can we use technology to, once someone's identified there's a problem, help them solve that problem? And how can we get it out to everyone as quickly as possible? And so when you start thinking about that, then you start to think you need to sort of take things back to basic principles and get to the question of like, how do we actually think about health? Because whenever you're trying to when you go to a doctor and you sort of like get an assessment, there's this whole sort of situation where the doctor has the clipboard and the doctor's writing things down and they're blood pressure cuff and there's this and there's that and there's a whole lot of one-sided interactions and there's not a whole lot of interactions and one of the things that I try and really conceptualize is video games. I think video games are wonderful, and I think that they really engage everybody. And I think a few people in this room would actually recall this sort of video game. But what's great about a game like this, even though the games don't usually look like this anymore, is that within about 5 minutes of playing it, you sort of work out that, I better get this right, that this is your health bar. And within about 5 minutes of playing it, you work out what you can do to make your health bar go up. And you work out what you can do to make your health bar go down. And you try and avoid the things that make your health bar go down. And you try and really go for the things that make your health bar go up. And it seems silly, but this is as simple as health should be. I know it isn't, but it is as simple as health should be. Every time you walk into a doctor's office, you should walk out with a solid understanding of what is going to make your health bar go up and what is going to make your health bar go down. So you know which things to avoid and which things to go for. And the thing is, we don't know that. So we don't have a clear message on how we can actually make ourselves healthier and what we can avoid to make ourselves less healthy. We still, when the best example I can think of is diet. Like, we still don't know, should we be low carb? Should we be vegetarian? Should we be vegan? God help us all. If we are vegan, should we also do CrossFit? And then should we tell everyone about it? Because nothing has been quantified. We don't know what the answer is. And that's just one aspect of health. And then, if you read into the literature about cholesterol, now we don't know. Eggs, don't get me started on eggs. The point is, we're not getting a clear message. We don't know what's going on. And a lot of that is due to the fact that we're not quantifying things well enough, and technology can actually help with that. Like, technology can start to help us to, to bridge the gap between what works for us and what works for everyone. Because one of the biggest issues with not getting a clear message, I think that after years and years of working in healthcare, what I'm starting to realize slowly is that everyone is an individual. Everybody requires personalized care. So you can't tell every single person on the planet to be a vegan because it's not going to work for them. You can't tell every single person on the planet to go and do the Atkins diet because that's not going to work for them. Everyone's individual. We need to have a personalized solution to every single problem. And that's where technology comes in. Because all of a sudden, there's this explosion of technology that helps us know ourselves better than ever before. It helps us to understand that there are all these wearables and ingestibles and this whole world of exciting technology that is all aimed toward helping us quantify ourselves better than ever before. And so once you accept that medicine needs to be personalized, that we need a personalized solution for every single person, the next question that I start to ask myself is, well, are clinicians, are doctors, nurses, physios, these very, very busy people who are running around the hospital all day, who try to treat everyone the same because it just saves time and effort, are they actually the right people to be asking about how to personalize medicine? Or is there another field that we can look to that actually might be doing it a little bit better? And my answer is that perhaps we need to look outside of the field of medicine. And so that's when I started collaborating with Red Bull. Red Bull, if you guys don't know, has a high performance division. Now, their whole brand is wrapped up in how can we make people better at what they do. And so they sponsor about 800 of the best athletes in the world. To be a Red Bull sponsored athlete, you need to be in the top 5 of your sport worldwide. And then they'll sponsor you, and then their pledge to you when they sponsor you is we will make you better at your sport. That's their pledge. And so what they do is we get to do really cool projects with them where we just put sensors and weird and wonderful things all over all of these high performance athletes, and we try and understand what makes them tick. We try and understand what actually is personally best for this particular athlete, because performance coaches worked out probably about 50 years ago, embarrassingly ahead of doctors and clinicians, that things need to be personalized for every single athlete. You can't have the same approach for every single athlete. And so that's what I'm going to talk about next. I'm going to show you guys a short video about what we're doing with Red Bull that I think really gets to the heart of what we're trying to do in terms of optimizing physical output, how we can get the most out of every single person.
Here we are at Red Bull headquarters, and we've got some of the best athletes and scientists in the world here answering the question, can we tell our muscles to keep going even when our brain is telling them to stop? If you can turn off the muscle when you get tired and feel like you can't do it anymore, but if you shut the brain off, then who knows how far we can go. Definitely uncharted territories. So we are looking at the role that the brain plays in the fatigue process. There's a mismatch from what the person can do and what the biological reserve is, and we're trying to understand that better so that we can design better training programs for these people.
They're monitoring everything that you can think of on your body. So there's tape around your neck, all of your body with electrodes on your calves, on your quads. It's not very comfortable, but I mean, it's super cool what they're doing.
We're going to do a whole bunch of physiological and neurological testing while we're exercising. We hold a paddle next to the head. It delivers a large but very short magnetic field, and then the muscle twitches involuntarily. So it makes the brain more responsive, and we're studying to see whether that happens in these athletes or not. So it's very interesting because we combine physiology, muscles and so on, but we also including the brain. You will not find this many scientists from so many disciplines working together with very high performance athletes.
So we've been here for 3 days. It's been really exciting and everything's been going smoothly. Tomorrow we take it into the velodrome. It's going to be a lot less controlled. Very excited to try it out and see what we get.
How can we change our sport? No one else in my sport is doing this.
I hope that the athletes will get out of this a better understanding of movement fatiguing, how much of that is their perception and how much biological reserve they might have. And we should be able to answer those questions using these techniques.
So for here to get out and actually ride the velodrome has been pretty fun. I mean, it's hard work to do 16 laps, but it's definitely fun.
I'll be really interested to see what they come up with over the next couple weeks, and we're just going to see what happens after that.
We had to do another 4-kilometer time trial in the velodrome here. They set up a LED lighting system from our best time yesterday. You could see the pace, so you're kind of chasing the slide in a way. What they didn't tell us is they actually made it faster than what our best pace was.
I thought we were going to race against each other, or race against the moto.
Yeah.
So you had us race against ourselves, faster ourselves.
You know, 2 of us had faster times, and then 2 of us actually, it kind of went the opposite. We had slower times because they blew up and trying to chase the light and it too fast. I don't know what all the data is going to tell us, but it was definitely pretty cool to actually have like a competitor next to you. That's you.
Really, the whole thing there is amazing because it's just really taking science to the limit. It's really testing the limits of what a controlled experiment is. And in my opinion, that is the only way that you can push scientific discovery forward and technological development forward is by saying, well, there's so many people that would say this project is too ambitious. We're going to do it anyway, and we're going to develop technology based on what we find here. So it's really exciting.
So that was Project Endurance. Ton of fun. Got to run around and play with athletes and hurt them and shock them and poke them. But the real thing that was exciting to me was that by utilizing this amazing force for good, which is Red Bull, where they're really bought into this message of what works for an athlete will work for everyone. We got to test out stuff that we would never get to test out on patients. Because we're pushing people really, really hard to the limit, and we got to learn things. We got to learn that using non-invasive brain stimulation actually improved these athletes' capacity to push out a little bit more muscle performance. And now, we're using that in stroke survivors. We're using the same non-invasive protocol, brain stimulation protocol, to before they go and do their physical therapy rehab to get more effect out of their rehab. And it's actually the center of an NIH-funded trial right now. So it's really exciting stuff. It's really interesting, but it also teaches us that wellness is a spectrum. It teaches us that we shouldn't even be talking about rehab anymore. We should be talking about optimizing performance. So it's not, you don't need to be an athlete to be interested in human performance. You don't even need to be able to walk or speak or use your arms to understand that all that we're trying to do is move ourselves along the spectrum. And what we need to work out is what works for us personally. Anything at all that will move us up this spectrum that we can commit to on the daily, that will make us feel a little bit better, a little bit more well, and perform at a higher level. And so on that note, let's talk about optimizing wellness. Let's take a step back from high performance athletes and let's start to talk about elderly individuals, because we've got a lot of them in this country, and the population is aging at an unprecedented rate. So by 2050, the number of people that are over the age of 65 is expected to double. I happen to work at my lab is based in Westchester County. Now, Westchester County is one of the oldest counties in the United States, and I don't mean grand old county. I mean it's 69 to 75% of over 65s in, that's not the stat I was talking about, it has the highest proportion of individuals over the age of 65 in the country. And in Westchester County, many of them have a lot of chronic conditions that both cost a lot of money and also are just very, very difficult to treat and place them at risk of being hospitalized a lot and just generally living in poor health. And so we wanted to really try and attack this problem. And so we developed a protocol called the Telehealth Intervention Program for seniors. Really, really simple thing, but we wanted to work on the sickest and the oldest and the least able to access care in Westchester County. So we wanted people who were living on Medicaid, over the age of 65, had 2 or more chronic conditions, and lived in either congregate housing, which is, like very sort of, project housing or very low rent nursing homes, or sort of affinity housing. So they're still community dwelling, but they don't have very good health insurance and they're living at or below the poverty line significantly. And so the system itself was very, very simple. You don't always need the most high-tech system in the world to make a difference. And so when I talk about technology and wellness and technology and health, it doesn't always need to be the craziest gadgets. It can actually be something really, really simple. And I say simple, it was actually the computerized monitoring was pretty hard to put together. And a shout out to Seidenberg School of Computer Science at Pace University, who actually put together this wonderful computerized system. But in essence, what we did was we set up little places in the community where elderly people went anyway. So like public libraries and YMCA rec rooms, and just where people usually over the age of 65 living out or below the poverty line, where they usually spend their sort of day-to-day. We set up these little stations, and we had Pace University students who were trained. They're not trained medically at all, but they were just trained to take metrics. They took their blood pressure, heart rate, weight, blood oxygenation, and they asked them 5 questions. Like, how are you feeling? Have you had a fall? Have you changed your meds? Have you changed your dosage? Like really simple questions about general wellness. We logged everything. The data went to a server. Remotely, a nurse would just look over the data and make sure everything's looking okay. And if the nurse saw something that looked a little bit out of sorts, they called the doctor and said, you should go and see Mr. or Mrs. X. And that's the system. So the only thing that we asked about participants, it was a completely free service. The only thing we asked is show up twice per week. That's it. In case you're wondering, the whole thing, bells, whistles, equipment, staffing, everything is $50,000 a year to run. So it's not all that much money. We started off with 23 participants in one site in Westchester County. And today we're at 900 participants, 12 sites. We're seeing a 35% reduction in hospitalizations. And that sort of compliance number that we asked for, we said, show up twice per week. People are showing up 1.75 times per week. So we're getting really high compliance on this. And the really interesting thing about all of this is most telehealth, if you look into the literature, you'll see that most telehealth initiatives like this don't work. The reason they rarely work is because compliance is really, really low. Does anyone want to have a guess at why our compliance is so high?
Could you go to where they are?
Nope. Because a lot of telehealth programs do that. Good guess though, but lots of people came up with that one. This was an accident. We discovered it by accident. Anyone else? Nope. They got to hang out with young people. All of our early populations were, I was surprised as well. So we got 900 people to complete a survey and say, why are you showing up? It's not because they're improving, their health is improving, even though it's demonstrably improving. They're just like, I get, the girl that takes my metrics reminds me of my granddaughter. Seriously, that's it. And I don't get to see my granddaughter. I get to see her twice per week. And 5 minutes. They get 5 minutes with this person, but that is bringing them back. And so it was really surprising. It was kind of sad, kind of cute. But it's getting compliance, and we're really excited about that. And so it really, it really points out the idea that you don't need to be high tech, and you can have the best system in the world, because this is what a lot of e-health groups are sort of stumbling on, because they're creating all of these wonderful computerized solutions that improve health, and they're like, look at our numbers, it improves your health. Well, improving your health isn't enough. You actually need to have something that gets people engaged and gets people coming back for more. And we're really proud of the fact that the TIPS program has managed to do that, even though it was completely unexpected. And now we know why. So we're going to be recruiting lots of young people to hang out at the TIPS side. So that's how it goes, I guess. All right. So now let's talk about another really important thing in living a good life and being as productive and high performing as you can be, and that's optimizing your happiness. And one thing that I really want to point out on this is there has been an explosion in the app world, about mindfulness, meditation, mental health apps. Like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of mental health apps are being released. Some of them are making really ridiculous promises about what they can do for mentally ill people. Some of them are just saying, hey, use the app and feel a little bit better. But there's thousands of them out there. And in terms of optimizing your performance, in terms of making your performance as good as it can be, the thing that I want to point out is that we've got a huge stigma about mental health. We've got a whole problem surrounding the idea that no one wants to admit that they have a mental health problem because of the way that they'll be spoken about. No one wants to, healthy people that would class themselves as healthy individuals don't want to speak about the idea that maybe they feel down sometimes, maybe they feel manic sometimes, maybe they feel overwhelmed sometimes, because there's such a stigma surrounding mental health. And what I'll say about all of the apps on the market right now that are trying to encourage mindfulness, meditation, and emotion regulation and all of these things, I would say that these are really wonderful products that for every single person who considers themselves healthy, these are wonderful products to use as a gym for your mind. Because I don't know how the physical health mafia managed to convince everybody that, hey, you've got to go to the gym most days of the week, or you need to do 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise most days of the week for optimal heart health. And yet we haven't been able to explain to people that for optimal mental health, you need to do things like this to actually keep yourself healthy. And doing stuff like this, practicing mindfulness meditation, practicing all sorts of emotion regulation techniques, these are the things that will stop otherwise healthy people from having a breakdown and then going, oh, there were no warning signs, I don't understand what happened. Well, the reality was you weren't exercising the parts of your minds that are required for optimal mental health. And so the big message in terms of using e-health to help if you're healthy is, try mindfulness meditation. There's strong literature to support it. Try apps that, and by the way, every single app that is on here is one that I've vetted and there's decent evidence for just making you feel a little bit better. And the idea is that we should be teaching this. We should be saying it shouldn't be a secret. Oh my God, they have mental problems, so don't go near them. That's ridiculous. The big prevailing thought in mental health is, oh, it can't happen to me. I've never had a problem. Well, categorically, that is nonsense. Everyone is capable of having mental health issues, but hopefully, if you're healthy, you can stay healthy by practicing things that keep you regulated and keep you responding to things appropriately. But then we need to think about what happens when it goes wrong. And what I do, again, categorically want to say is that all of those apps that I showed beforehand, there is no evidence to suggest that they will help if you have a mental illness and you're not, seeing a therapist regularly. And there's a big narrative right now saying, oh yeah, just download an app and you don't need to see a therapist. Nope. See a therapist. Don't minimize therapy. Get professional help and move along. But that's not to say that e-health can't help in this space. So my lab started working on a huge problem, both nationally and globally. There's some really frightening stats here about suicide. I think we've all heard a lot about this. There's 22 veteran deaths a day. There's 25 deaths a day in the over 65 population, and that's actually estimated to be maybe even underestimated by 4 times, because when an old person dies, people often don't look too far into why they died. And to me, the problem is staggering. We're in the room for an hour, and in that hour, five people in the US will take their lives. 90 people worldwide will take their lives. It's a huge issue. And so my lab tried to work on a concept that might help, which is an application that the way that we designed this app is that it would have to work with therapists. You have to be in therapy with treatment-resistant depression or suicidal thought and suicidal ideation to be prescribed this app by your therapist. So it's not an app that anyone can download on the App Store. It's an app that a therapist has as an adjunct to therapy. The problem that we were trying to solve is the fact that your average insurance, if you're in therapy, your average insurance will pay for one therapy session every 3 weeks. And what all the therapists were telling us was this is just inadequate for things like cognitive behavioral therapy and DBT. It just doesn't work if you can only come in once every 3 weeks. What we need, they were saying what we need is we need people coming in weekly, maybe even bi-weekly or tri-weekly. But since that's not realistic, can we use technology to augment our message and help people stay well? So I'm going to show you a short video about how the app works. This was actually a video that we put forward for a crowdfunding campaign, but the crowdfunding campaign's over now, so just enjoy the video.
Every single day, there's at least one client that I work with that is in a state where they want to take them. So at the Crisis Center, we serve all of New York City, and we get about 10,000 calls a week. It's very hard to do follow-up. It's mostly crisis prevention. So after the initial engagement, I rarely get a find again. There is pressure to turn over calls quickly. Of course, we're never going to leave anybody in crisis, so if need be, we will talk to them for longer. But the longer that we are online with them, that means that another person potentially in crisis is then waiting. Availability of therapy, the accessibility is so low. There are massive inadequacies in the system.
We're really working hard to try and find a solution for that. We partnered with globally recognized experts in psychology and technology development in order to design Mindly, a radical new approach to addressing suicide prevention.
A lot of the tech advancements that I'm seeing in mental health are trying to replace the therapist. And what I love about Mindly is that it's not a replacement of the therapist, it's allowing the therapist to use technology to advance their practice. This is the way that we get into the home life in a way that we can't when we're without Alzheimer's. We can't when we're intervening in a crisis situation.
Therapists understand that their clients are most vulnerable between therapy sessions. Mindly checks in to provide customized support during these periods. It monitors users and directs them to exercises and video messages from their own therapist. All the user has to do is reach for their phone, and Mindly can help them through a tough time.
So a huge issue in the mental health field, and a huge hurdle in many mental health clinicians and program space, that tracking outcomes is extremely difficult.
Mindly can track use patterns and engagement over time to deliver detailed information about how clients are doing outside of the clinic. This is unprecedented. No app in the world has ever offered therapists this sort of ability.
Mindly's ability to collect data is very unique and needed in this community. You can't be connected to your client 24/7, but
you can help them be connected to you.
Perhaps the most essential feature of MindMe is its ability to connect users with an emergency contact if they find themselves contemplating suicide. Using the latest encrypted video conferencing technology, we ensure that a MindMe user is never alone.
What we need the funds from this experiment.com campaign for is to prepare the app technologically for a large-scale clinical trial, and then to fund the clinical trial itself. We really can't stress enough how rapidly we need to roll this solution out so that it can start helping people immediately.
So that's our suicide prevention app. We are really sort of proud to announce that we just won 2 NIH grants to explore over 5 years the effect of this app in 2 different cohorts. We're going to be working with really fancy pants people like at Stanford and Johns Hopkins, which is really good. And so calls up in 5 years, we'll let you know. But we're going to be studying this over 5 years and really just quantifying the effect of this approach very, very carefully, because it's a vulnerable population. We don't, unlike a lot of apps out there, we don't want to be making wild claims about its efficacy until we're ready. But we've had about 5 or 6 users using it already, and we're seeing really exciting things. So we're excited about how this is going to go. We're also trying to expand it out to offer more support to people. So we're taking a lot of inspiration in this front from a group called Be My Eyes. I don't know if anyone's heard about this, but it's really, really cool app out there that was designed by a bunch of people that said, you know what, blind people would love to know what's going on in the world sometimes. So we're going to create an app that, if they hit it, it immediately links them to a community of people who are just willing to explain what the camera of their phone is seeing. So they hit this app, they hold it up, and someone will just talk them through what they're seeing. And similarly, what we want to try and build out with MindMe is a situation where if someone is feeling extremely at risk of suicide, really in crisis, they hit a button and immediately, like an Uber-style map shows up, and it's like, there are 1,000 people who care if you live or die that will speak to you right now. That sort of harnessing, using technology to bring people together, using technology to break down barriers and make sure that you can know your neighbors and know your neighbors if they're in crisis. So we're really excited about the future, and we're going to just keep on plugging, even though there's no funding whatsoever for this sort of work, but we'll see how we go. And so it's hot, and you've all been really, really good, so we're almost done. We can drink wine and talk. But I just want to finally talk about one last thing, which is we've spoken about people all over the spectrum of wellness. We've spoken about elite athletes, we've spoken about people all along the way, and now I just finally want to talk about people right at the very end of the spectrum, who often get forgotten, who maybe have very, very little ability. And for that, I'm going to talk about Not Impossible. So they call me their chief mad scientist. Basically, I'm basically the scientific advisory officer. There's this very charismatic guy who runs Not Impossible who always shouts to people, commit and figure it out. And I always say to him, yeah, you commit and then I figure it out. They're a great organization. Their tagline is technology for the sake of humanity, and that's exactly what they do. And Not Impossible all started out with one person. And this is an individual by the name of Tempt One. Tempt was an insanely famous graffiti artist in the LA area, and he contracted ALS, which I don't know if anyone's heard of ALS. Has anyone? Raise their hands. Wow, a lot of people. So it's a cruel disease. It's a disease where your motor neurons in your spinal cord, these cells that control voluntary movement in your body, just die off. We don't know why. Sometimes it's genetic, sometimes it's chemical exposure, but for whatever reason they die off, and they die off at a rate that leaves you pretty much trapped inside your own body. You can't move, you can't speak, you can't do anything for yourself. You can feel everything. All of your sensation is intact. Everything about you is intact, but you just can't move. And so Tempt didn't have insurance, so he ended up in a hospital, and he was bedridden. His parents had to go through the incredibly painful step of disowning him so that he would get better medical benefits as a ward of the state. and he still could not get, because he was unable to communicate, he could not get eye tracking technology that would allow him to communicate independently, because the eye tracking technology costs $30,000. The insurance does pay for it eventually, but believe it or not, the time you have to wait is roughly equivalent to the life expectancy of someone with ALS before you get the eye tracking technology that will allow you to communicate independently. So Knowing Possible stepped in and said, you know what, we're going to do something about it. And we created the iWriter. The iWriter was a webcam that was cracked out of its shell, zip tied to a coat hanger. And the coat hanger was duct taped to a really crappy pair of sunglasses with the lenses popped out. It cost $25, and it allowed temps to write, draw, paint, create 3D art, sculptures, everything. He got his independence back, he started communicating again. We were all over the moon at the fact that we had returned independence to this guy. And it got a lot of attention. So everyone was saying, oh, innovation, blah, 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 exciting. But we learned something else. Because innovation is basically my least favorite word. Basically, I think that people who say the word innovation are describing a quality that they don't understand. But the reality is innovation isn't all that innovative. Everyone surrounding a problem, people who are very close to a problem, they know what the solution is, but they can rarely get people to actually commit to the solution. And so what was really interesting about the iWriter was that everyone on the iWriter team, after the project, went to Mick and they said, you know what, Mick, if you had told us how hard this was going to be when we started, we never, ever would have done it. It was a disaster, it was hard, it was awful, but we all got caught up in trying to help one, and we did it. And we made it open source, we made it freely available to everyone. And so the message that we learned about with the iWriter was help one, help many. Innovation comes when you get everyone to just forget all the garbage, forget all the, oh, but my job, oh, but this, oh, but that, oh, but someone might sue us. Forget all of that. Just get immersed in this problem because there's someone suffering there. And let's help many people. So that's a real sort of ethos of Knowing Possible now. I'm going to show you a short video about another project that we got involved in. And this is a project called Don's Voice. So Don is another gentleman who had ALS, who hadn't communicated in about 15 years. And the iWriter wasn't really going to work with him. He didn't like having things on his face. So again, ALS, you can still feel things. And so if you can imagine having a pair of glasses, or sunglasses with the weight of webcams hanging on your face day in, day out, it's actually not that pleasant. And so we found a different eye tracking technology that was super cheap, but was not allowed to be turned into assistive technology. So the company that sold it had a $30,000 model of this hardware, and they said, you can buy the $100 model, but you're not allowed to use it, turn it into assistive technology. So we turned it into assistive technology.
I promise it's pretty in good time and it's simple and
I think the first year he still did pretty much everything. Diagnosed in March 95. Hi, Daddy.
very good.
That whole crop year he worked. He worked with his dad still. Daddy. Hi, Daddy.
He's constantly losing abilities every week. And what did you last week? He can't do this week. Next week he wants to do something else, but never what. He actually was a really good learning experience for me. He taught me a lot. How to change the oil in the lawnmower, how to do the books for the farm, how to take on the responsibilities that he used to do. I'm not even sure if he realized that he would be able to speak, but I remember explaining that to him. Yeah, if you do go to his name, not be able to speak anymore. At that point, it was better for me. I was listening to the CBC radio and I heard Nick Evelyn be interviewed about the highlighter.
My name is Nick Evelyn, founder of Impossible Labs. Everything that we stand for is this concept of technology for the sake of humanity. How do you take something, modify it, link it, adapt it in some way, so it accomplishes maybe something it wasn't intended to do, but it accomplishes a fundamental human need that someone has. As soon as I found out about Telehealth, I knew that Impossible had to get it on this website. My name is Trevor Kennedy. I'm an engineer and volunteer for Impossible Labs. The goal of the device was to create something that actually allowed Don to speak audibly with his family and be able to communicate more independently.
But you have to remember that he's never used a computer before. So he was diagnosed in 1995.
So he missed that whole era of really accessible personal computers and cell phones.
Don never touched a computer. He doesn't even know what it's going on.
So when I went there the first time, I was this fancy software and fancy device, and he just said, "I'm sorry, I can't do this." So I had to think about the way to communicate for the last 50 years.
That's what he sent me his letter sheet.
The letterboard is a piece of paper with the alphabet written on it in 4 quadrants. So you can tell if you pull the letterboard in front of his face which corner he's looking at by where his eyes are.
And that's exactly what I'm doing in my program. Looping through the letters, and when he's ready, he looks to the middle, and voila, his word is there.
It's not as needed as fast.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's developing, so who knows where to go.
We'll get it. Eventually, we'll get it. A year ago, I made Don a promise. That I will find an answer that works for him specifically.
Really, mainly, we want to help Trevor to be able to develop this so we can help other people. That's the main motivation.
He'll be looking there. He's not looking there.
I love you, Ray. When I look at Don, that could be me. That could be my uncle, that could be my dad. What right do I have to do nothing about it?
I just need to imagine you flying with it the way you did, and that's just it's just amazing. Literally the things to say.
The goal of the project was to give Don his voice back and give him more of his independence.
He's typing over 2.5 words a minute, and once he's typing, say, 3 or 4 words a minute, at that point, you're actually talking full conversation.
We've created something for Don that has given him this sense of independence. And now everybody has access to this. This is this simple piece of technology that is going to be so liberating for people around the world.
My dear Ray, I can't imagine life without you. You have made the last 25 years fly by and the last 20 with ILS more bearable. I am looking forward to the next 25 years. Love, Don.
So that was Don's voice. Completely open source once again, so you can download the software that made Don update from the Impossible website. If anyone that you know has ALS, it's pretty simple to use. You can shoot me an email if you need to learn how to use it. But you know, that's kind of what technology has the potential to do to really help people out. So everything I just presented to you was the culmination of a whole lot of people working on everything. So I'd like to just acknowledge everyone else, and it's an amazing team of people from everywhere working on this. So it's really great and humbling to work with such amazing people. The Genspace series is going to continue, so we've got a couple of really great speakers coming up over the next couple of weeks, so make sure you mark these in your calendar and get out if you can. The Vice President of No Science would shoot me, the Treasurer of No Science, if I did not give you guys a plug and say we're a 501c3, donations are tax deductible. You can go onto the website to donate, and please do, and thank you all so much for coming out and creating it.
If someone needs to step outside, please feel free to. But if there are questions,
Can you go back?
So which mindfulness app do you like the best? The ones that you
Headspace.
Thanks.
What was the names for CLS?
Tempt one.
You spoke about the brain stimulation with your athletes. Is that TDCS or what are you using?
TDCS. But I do want to point out that it's TDCS, but it's very, very personalized TDCS. There's a lot of simulators out there that are sort of like one-size-fits-all things. They don't have a lot of evidence behind them, but there are things that allow you to actually place your electrodes, and we use anatomy, we use brain scans, and that's how we decide where we're going to put our electrodes.
So specifically, what aspects of their physical capacity is being altered?
Good question. So we were actually using, we were up-regulating motor cortex, so we were stimulating motor. We were doing an excitatory protocol over motor cortex, over the late area of motor cortex. So the hypothesis was if we prime the neurons to fire more easily, it will take less effort to fire the neurons. We saw a small effect in the athletes. It was actually much smaller in the athletes than it was in our patients and in our healthy subjects, because these guys, they're athletes for a reason. Like they push it to the limit, and when they're fatigued, there's not a lot more you can get out of it. But we did see tiny people. Yeah. What else? Yes.
General question. So, as someone being in academia, it seems that it takes one person to take your time to say, okay, let's go do this. So, how do you manage academia and your role in all these other projects and nonprofits? Because I'm like, it's quite incredible. What advice would you give to someone who's also involved in both roles?
Something that I'm slowly learning is typically there's funding, even though people say there's no funding, so try to at least get some of your time and effort covered so that your institute remains happy with you.
Does your institute count this? Yeah.
No, and that's something that we're constantly talking about. Berkeley is an amazing place to work, and so they're very open to conversations like this. So when you show them a video and you say, hey, Berkeley Institute has been seen on 1.7 million views on a YouTube video, and then there's 10 of those videos. Eventually, it's sort of getting through that that's actually value. But it's definitely a non-traditional model, and we're talking about all sorts of ways to find ways to fund it because everyone wants innovation, everyone talks about it, everyone gets excited about it, but institutes need to start to understand that they also need to pay for it in creative ways. One of the conversations we've had is, can't the marketing budget be brought into allowing PIs to actually have the freedom to chase one day a week on a project like this because it will bring so much notice to the institute. And so, you know, it's emerging and it's new, and thankfully I'm in a place where we can have open conversations about it. Because I know a lot of institutes are way more traditional and closed off about that, but it definitely needs to be said.
The other thing I noticed you mentioned with the first impact relations that you realized that I think that instead of only one, you wanted to multiply on many people. You have essentially what it would take for the kind of work that you're doing to be able to help lots of people through commercialization or perhaps spreading it via open source, getting adopted.
So the original iWriter was actually picked up by, I could get this wrong, but I want to actually say Samsung, and they mass produced it because there were no patents on it, there were no anything, so they just mass produced it for like $20. So in many ways, what we do at Knowing Possible is find a solution and share it with everyone. The idea is disrupt the industry. So we did the iWriter, and I think that there was enough disruption from that industry that 2 years later, Tobii and other eye tracking companies were coming out with $150 eye tracking solutions. Then we did Project Daniel, which was a 3D printed prosthetics device. That was in November of 2013. No one had heard about a 3D printed prosthetic. I'm not saying we're the first ones. There were many, Richard Van Aast, who's a South African designer, had been doing this a lot. But there was like one or two people who had been putting things up on the Thingiverse and the MakerBot. And then once the impact got out there, that got Project Daniel got 1 billion in earned media impressions in 9 months, which means that if you were to pay for that level of coverage, you would pay $1 billion to an advertising firm. And then everyone was doing prosthetics, and they were way better than ours. So we're now actually, with Project Daniel, we're sending a group called Enable, which is really just, revolutionized the field of 3D printed prosthetics, parts in Sudan, to revamp the clinic that we initially set up. So it's really, we're just sort of like, start the fire and then walk away. That's how we do it. Yes.
Do you guys publish your findings from medical performance labs? Because I know that with a lot of high performance athlete studies, some of the findings don't seem statistically relevant, but they would be because they're high performing athletes. That's like the book that you made.
Yeah, so we have published 3 peer-reviewed papers at American College of Sports Medicine and 1 in brain stimulation. So two in American College of Sports Medicine meetings and 1 at a brain stimulation meeting. So that you can actually look Red Bull Project Endurance, if you Google that or Google Scholar that, you can find the abstracts. And we're trying to get all of our collective apps together to publish actual long form papers because we have so much data, and it is meaningful. I mean, we had an N of 9, and we were tracking them continuously for 4 days. And when I say continuously, I mean there was patches on them 24/7, tracking all of their metrics. So it's really just a matter of sifting through that data and coming out with it. But that's not trivial. So when you've got other things happening. Yes.
You guys are currently trying the non-prescription app, the app.
Yes.
The money app.
Yes.
How is it going?
We're very early stages. So we just got awarded 2 NIH grants that will start in July, and then we'll have a lot more data. We currently have 5 people using the app, and I mean, it's not significant at all. I'll just go on record saying that, but all of their metrics are improving. So we're using Madras scores to look at emotion regulation, suicidal incidents of suicidal thought and ideation. They're all improving using the app, and they all seem aware that the app is why they're improving. But it's not, it's nothing we can hang our hat on just yet. But we're excited to see how it goes.
Why does it seem so hard? How come Google doesn't embrace you, fund you?
Google, embrace me and love me. Yeah, I think it's all about the circles you roll in, and I mean, I have high hopes for Google. I mean, they just hired Tom Insel, who's like the head of the NIH, and near as I can tell from everything he's ever published and wrote and spoken about, he's the guy. I'm a young investigator. He's like, he's been saying the right things for a really long time, and so I mean. These are problems where I don't really care who solves the problem, so long as someone solves the problem. So I'm really happy that Google has hired Tom Insel, and hopefully he will like make it happen. But if they want to hire me as well, that would be fine. So yeah.
Do you have any takeaways from that project endurance? Like something you could apply to a regular person to come close to the athlete's performance?
Okay, so good question. So like I said, with the non-invasive brain stimulation finding went already available to individuals. I think another thing that was a really important takeaway from Project Endurance that I'd say to everyone was I had this impression that, athletes are athletes just because they train really hard and probably had a genetic advantage at some point and that's it. They just train every day really, really hard. Totally not the case. The real takeaway as I started to work with high performance athletes is that the reason they're so high performing is they have this team around them, this team of individuals who know them inside and out. And so they're like, okay, this person needs to wake up at 7 a.m. You need to be following them, clapping your hands, telling them how wonderful they are, or they're going to just like crumble down into tears and cry. This person, don't even step into their room until noon, then give them the steak, then like step away again. Every single one is completely different, and their performance coaches have calibrated their approach perfectly to deal with that. And that's how we've got to be. Like reading, Pumping Iron and going, oh, this is how I turn into Arnold Schwarzenegger. If it doesn't suit your personality, if it doesn't suit your habits, if it's not something you can keep up for a lifetime, you're not gonna reap the performance benefits. So yeah, really the only thing is what I've been saying all along, which is avoid a generalized approach. Work out what works for you, makes you feel good, shows that your metrics are improving, and stick with that.
So I was curious about how the human-centered design approach of like industrial designers and UI UX designers work with y'all with the exact data and these quantified metrics on what should be put into an app and how. I'm wondering how y'all work together as a team / what that looks like for the development of these mindful apps.
Yeah, so we really embarrassing and shameful answer to that question is, with the Mind Me app, for example, we're working with elderly populations very, very pointedly because they're so impressed by tablets. Like you got an 80-year-old individual and the tablet keeps crashing. They're so patient with it. They're amazing. They're just like, oh, well, it's still a tablet. That's amazing. We didn't have them when I was 15. And whereas you give it to a kid, and because I work a lot with kids with cerebral palsy, give it to a kid, and they will like look at you. They will say some really cutting things, and they'll throw the thing on the ground and walk out. And so the roundabout way of me answering your question is currently what we're doing is we're working out principles of what works, what doesn't. Because we don't have the findings, we don't have the funding to bring in really talented UI UX people. That being said, I'm currently writing grants, the SBIR mechanism grants, which are like the NIH funds small business grants and so I'm working with like UI UX firms just on this problem. Like, how do we actually get people engaged? We're doing stroke rehab using video games, and same issue. It's like, well, video games are fun and all, but only if you have a good game designer making them. So we were actually really fortunate that our latest grant got a letter of support from T2 Interactive, which is biggest gaming companies on the planet. They made Grand Theft Auto, Lemmings, lots of really good games, and they've committed to sort of helping us out and giving us advice on how to actually create a game that's awesome. But the biggest issue is just money. No one's making that leap of let's actually invest cash in this and do it properly. But we're trying to get there. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Sorry I'm late, and maybe you covered this, and you shoot me down if you did. We talked about the brain and performance as I'm a long-time sub-elite distance runner. And you just said a moment ago that, well, it's not all about training and performance repetitions, and it's all very individualistic. And, well, I think for people like me who are sub-elite, it is actually about a lot of consistency and training and discipline, and you plug away at it, and some days are better than others. But I'm no longer 35 or 40 years old, and to what extent the fact that I am not quite as fast as I used to be, I'm afraid that the reality is that has not to do with the brain, but with something the aging process. And is there anything that can happen to the brain to overcome that? I'm afraid I know what the answer is, but I want you to talk about that.
Well, I'm really glad you brought up what you did, because it means that I wasn't communicating clearly enough. Repetitions, high repetitions, extremely important. And in fact, there's a lot of literature around this now. But what's equally important is that the high repetitions need to be engaged repetitions. So you need to be excited, you need to be enjoying them for them to have optimal effect. So there's this wonderful study that a guy called Randy Nudo performed, seminal study in motor control, where he tried to understand how a monkey learned a task and what happened to the monkey's brain when it was learning a task. And if he got a monkey to perform 10,000 repetitions of a highly repetitive, monotonous task, nothing happened. No learning, no brain changes, nothing. If he brought in an active learning component to the task and then got the 10,000 repetitions, a whole lot happened. The brain completely changed and all the rest of it. So high repetitions is massively important. But what I was trying to say is that the high performance athletes, across the board, when you're at that elite level, everyone's doing 10,000 repetitions. What brings them that half a second above everybody else is the fact that they did 10,000 repetitions and they loved it, and they couldn't wait to get back out there and push themselves to the absolute limit the next day. In answer to the second part, there's not a whole lot you can do. There are adjuncts to therapy that there weren't. There are adjuncts to training that there weren't before. So really, the only advice is if you can try to find ways to make yourself more competitive with yourself than you could before. Whether that be a Fitbit that's telling you that these are your metrics, or whether it be, whether you start to work out with non-invasive brain stimulation, or whether you start to do any other sort of thing that makes you that gets you feeling a bit more edgy, maybe. But yeah, at some point we've got to acquiesce to the fact that we're getting older.
Just one quick point to we got repetitions. As someone who's been doing that for not just years but decades. Anecdotally, I think I and many other brothers would confirm that doing it with, I race for a team and we have team workouts. And while it's very easy to go out and do long runs by oneself, and that works, when it comes to high intensity interval repetitions, where you're really pushing yourself, doing it with a team, people you know and respect and train with, people encourage each other, and it works a whole lot better than trying to do that same workout by oneself, even if physiologically one can approach that.
No, I didn't know that. I'm getting the big hook from Allison, so that's
I think we are going to stop it there, but let's get one more round of and bearing with the small space of heat, this is many more people than we were expecting, so that's a wonderful testament to David. Just quickly, Please, David will be here for a while, so please stick around to enjoy food and wine. Please also subscribe to Genspace mailing list over here, as well as check out No Science at noscience.org and subscribe to them. If anyone would like to see the lab, we can take a quick tour in a few minutes. And then also, lastly, but very important, Genspace is a nonprofit, so any donations that you could give would be a great help to us to keep free events like this going. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you. If anyone has snow days, I will take it as well. Grants.